Welcome back to the Graham Stephan Show. So one of my biggest pet peeves out there is when people make really good money, they have all the opportunity in the world, and they somehow manage to screw it all up by making really poor financial decisions. And when it comes to that, Dave Ramsey is the one who's calling it out. And that brings me to this video here. It's titled, "You're a broke person making $170,000. So with that said, I want to comment on it because it's an absolute train wreck as soon as you hit the like button and subscribe. And now with that said, here are my thoughts, because it's bad.
I'm having trouble getting to pay off my debt. I've tried many different things. I lack the discipline really needed to stop living paycheck to paycheck. And the saddest part is I have a really good salary.
What's your really good salary?
I make $170.
So you know what's crazy is that it's about 50% of the people that make over $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. 50%, 1 in 2 people. At $100,000 a year, unless maybe you're living in a place like Manhattan, New York City, or maybe San Francisco, possibly Los Angeles, depending on the area. But beyond those few select cities in a few very select circumstances, when you have a full family, $100,000 a year, living paycheck to paycheck, seems more to me like a spending problem and not so much of an income problem overall. Now, obviously, if you're supporting a family of 8, in Manhattan, obviously, $100 grand after tax is not going to get you that far. But for most people out there, 9 times out of 10, it just means you're spending too much money.
How much debt do you have, sir?
$27,000, $28,000. I ignored my debt for years, and then both of my credit cards were canceled. I settled one of them, and that was fine. And then the other one, I was served because they're suing me for the debt.
Yikes. You know it's serious when they start serving you with lawsuits to pay it. That's the thing. Anytime you take out a loan, someone's got to pay it. It's coming from somewhere. Even if you don't pay it and it goes off into collections and you just say, well, screw it, I'm going to let it ruin my credit report for 7 years. Well, guess what? You're paying for it in other ways, because then you can never use your credit ever again. So that means you can never borrow anything. You're going to have a hard time renting a place. You're going to have a hard time getting a car, leasing a car, sometimes even getting a job if they check your credit and they see all the collections. Chances are, if you're not paying off your debts, maybe there's other things that are slipping too. It's going to cost you one way or another. You're paying for it.
What do you do?
I work in politics.
Okay.
Consulting.
Political consulting. I've never heard of that. I'm so curious what that entails. Like, why someone needs a political consultant. What is that for, like, someone in the Senate? Because they're like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you like? What does he consult on? I'm so curious if someone would even get that job and what they do. But that seems like one of those unnecessary positions that we could, just snip away. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying here. I've never heard of that before.
Do you currently have 2 places of residence?
Yes.
And how much is the New York apartment?
The New York apartment is $2,000.
And how much is the Orlando apartment?
$1,200. But my girlfriend and I split it.
Yeah, it's not terrible. I mean, he's at the upper range of what he could spend renting based on his income. So it's like he falls within the bracket of spending less than 1/3 of his income on housing. The issue that I see is he's spending more money everywhere else.
There are some key different things that I just don't have that I think. So for instance, I don't have a car. I do need to get a car. And instead of, because my credit isn't the best, and I've been worried about
where is $80,000 gone in 6 months?
It's funny he's talking about all the things he still needs. It's like, oh yeah, the 80 grand, but I don't have a car. I need that. I need that Rolex watch because in political consulting, you're gonna have a good image. Where'd the money go? My guess, this guy has no idea. And probably food. Usually it's food, travel, that sort of stuff.
You're starting to sound like Congress.
Yeah, see, that's a good point. The political consultant has no idea where the 80 grand went. Just like the United States has no idea where all their money goes. I have no idea. When you pay taxes, where does the money go? Who gets paid? Who's lining their pockets with your tax stuff? Where does it go? How much unnecessary spending is there out there? And this is the guy who's consulting for it. So no wonder we have a bad budget.
Let's pretend that you go to the doctor this afternoon and he says you need $27,000 by Christmas or you're going to die. All of a sudden, your stupid decisions would go away because you would have one goal. I want to live.
You know what the funny thing is? The same thing also works for your career and work. Like, let's just say you give yourself a task and you say, I need to get this done in 24 hours. And you think, oh, that's going to be impossible. Well, guess what? If you had a gun to your head and they said, you're going to be unalived if you don't get this done in 24 hours, guess what? You're going to get it done in 24 hours. The same thing, imagine if you want to lose weight and someone says, okay, you got 2 months and you got to lose 10 pounds. I'm throwing out numbers. I don't know if that's realistic or not. Okay, probably not. But regardless, if someone said that, otherwise you're going to be unalived, you find a way to do it. So the point with that is, if you want something bad enough, if your life depended on it, you'd find a way to make it work. So when I kind of think about that with my own self, I think, okay, if I want to put myself on a tight deadline to get something done, and I know what the outcome is, if I just pretend I'm going to be unalived, if I don't get it done, get it done. Always works.
My colleagues have 2 apartments. Who gives a crap what your colleagues do? You are a broke guy making 170. You got to change some crap. Get up in your own grill and go, that's enough. I've had it.
Yeah, this guy needs a way bigger budget, though. This guy should go on Caleb Hammer, because the problem with this is that he knows what he should be doing. Like, Dave is telling him the obvious. You're spending too much money. You're living above your means. You got to track your expenses, which is incredibly important, by the way. But he's not really getting into the meat and bones of, like, where did the money go? We know where some of it's going, but we don't know where all of it's going. But speaking of bad financial choices, that brings us to this video here, where Dave says, this is one of the worst financial products alive today. And if you're curious what that is, hit the like button, subscribe, and get a free stock down below in the description when you make a deposit, because that could be worth all the way up to a few $1,000s with the paid affiliate link down below. And now, get ready for the product.
Quick question. My son got himself stuck into a whole life policy. So I was wondering, what's the major difference between the 401k and a mutual fund that he may be able to borrow against in the future?
And if you're unfamiliar with what a Roth IRA is, it's basically a tax-advantaged account that you could put post-tax money into, meaning you've already paid taxes on the money, you put that in the account, then all the profit you make within that account is completely tax-free at the age of 59 and a half. So if you're 20 years old, you're already in a low tax bracket, which means you have more money left over after paying taxes to then invest with. All of that money grows, and by the time you're 60, it's all profit. Like, your tax basis is so low for the money that you put in early on that you're sitting on tax-free profits. There's no reason not to do this. The Roth IRA is one of my favorite accounts at all times. I recommend everybody do as much as they can to max that out. Just broad index funds, some basic stuff. Don't go crazy with it. Just sit on it, do nothing, dollar cost average over time, and let it grow. Let it grow. The 401k could be good if you have an employer match, or if you're in a really high tax bracket now and you intend to retire in a lower tax bracket in the future. The problem with that, though, is that I think taxes are only going up, okay? And I could be totally wrong, but I think taxes today are going to be lower than what they are 20 years from now, because we're spending so much money that the money has to come from somewhere. And I think it's probably got to come from higher taxes. Like, Social Security's running out. They're going to tax that more. So, it's basically you're placing a bet that you're going to be taxed lower in the future than you will today, which I don't know if that's a bet worth taking. Maybe.
When you say, son, this is a dumb way of doing it, it's not a good investment program, what does he say? Oh, I can borrow against it?
That's his big hook, yes.
Okay. Well, no one ever got rich borrowing their investments.
Well, okay, people who get into real estate do that by borrowing. They put down a 20% down payment, they borrow the difference, they finance it over 30 years. The renter pays off the mortgage, hopefully, if all goes well. They keep doing that. But beyond real estate's, I think, the only investment vehicle that you could leverage your money successfully long term. Anything else, I think, is probably too risky.
You have a mutual fund that's either covered with a coat keeping it warm from taxes, and the coat is called a 401k or an IRA or a Roth IRA, or it has no coat and it's out in the cold and has taxed. But in both cases, it's still a mutual fund. Could be the exact same mutual fund. But wealthy people don't build their investments in order to borrow against them.
Some of them do, though, okay? In fairness, it's called buy, borrow, die. What that entails is that you buy assets, you borrow against them, so that way all the money you get is a loan, it's not taxed, and then you die, and then you could pass it on to your, kids or whoever you want to give it to, with a stepped-up tax basis, so then that way you don't have to pay any tax on it. So it's doable. You have to be generally pretty well off to really employ this strategy, because for most people it would make sense just sell it, pay the tax on it. But if you're really rich and you have tens of millions of dollars, borrowing against those assets could be at a really low interest rate compared to paying tax on it. Just spend that tax-free. It's technically a loan, it's not income. Enjoy that, and then unalive, you know? So it's doable in certain situations.
The average whole life policy, according to research, averages 1.2% rate of return. Not going to get rich on that either. And then when you finally get past all of that, if you actually build it up, you can borrow and pay them interest to use your money.
It's a bad deal. Honestly, a lot of people would be better off just investing as normal, just dollar cost averaging into the markets on a regular basis. I say this a million times, through a well-diversified index fund, and that's it. And that's it. Just do that for 30 years. Chances are over 30 years, you're going to be better off than doing just about anything else. No gambling, no speculating, just stick with the boring basics consistently, and that's how complicated investing is. It's not. It's easy.
Son of Jeremy, you have been screwed by the life insurance industry. The way they get you is they go, sophisticated rich people lease their cars. No, they don't. No, they don't. It's a dumb butt middle class thing to do.
Again, it depends. It's not black and white, okay? So I love Dave Ramsey. But Dave Ramsey really appeals to, like, I would say 90% of the people out there. For 90% of the people out there, he could say, spit whatever facts he wants to, and like, yeah, that's true. Leasing, stupid. But I like to think of the approach that, leasing's stupid, unless you're part of that 10% where it kind of makes sense. If you're in a profession where you could write off the car as a business expense and you're switching cars pretty often, leasing is going to cost you money, but it's going to cost you less money than just buying a new car every 3 years. So it can make sense in certain situations, but overall for most people, buying is still cheap.
If your social media sounds like a tic-tac, you know, there's only one thing you should listen to on TikTok, and that's stuff we put out. But other than that, it's awful. It's a barren landscape of morons.
It's crazy with TikTok because it's somewhat true. The amount of misinformation out there that's getting spread on TikTok is insane. Even, by the way, have you seen these studies that have come out about people who have tics? They have speech impediments and tics and involuntary motions, and people are watching it. They watch it and then they get recommended more of it, and then they start imitating those behaviors and showing up to doctors and saying, I don't know why all of a sudden I have Tourette's. I don't have a history of Tourette's, but I have Tourette's now. Because they're watching TikToks about Tourette's, they're convincing themselves in their mind they have Tourette's. And over time, they just develop Tourette's in their mind because they're watching it on TikTok. I think it's awful, and I think you have to be very careful about what you watch and what you put in your mind. It's like a diet. It's like, what do you put in your body? Bad food or good food? What are you putting in your mind? Junk or something educational, like this, that you could subscribe and follow?
No one in the financial planning community believes in it. We've all been looking at it going, you gotta be kidding, for decades. And now that stuff comes back on TikTok. It's unbelievable.
I love Dave. Dave is fantastic. So with that said, you guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, feel free to subscribe, add me on Instagram, add me on Snapchat, hit the like button. Thank you so much, and until next time.